You're
Audio, please.
listening to 91.5 WUML Lowell Blues Deluxe. And I have Tad Isch on the line with me. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you.
Well, I'm certainly happy to speak to you about all of these good things.
Yeah, well, you have quite a little career going on here with Butch Trucks and all the bands you've been in. Let's go back to the beginning. Where'd you start out? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Morristown, New Jersey, which everybody always confused with Morristown, but it's Morristown. And it was a small town outside of Philadelphia. It was a nice little, kind of a semi-rural community and just a good place. And some really great musicians in town. And both my parents my mother died pretty young. So my dad remarried, and both my parents were music teachers. So my dad was a teacher at Trenton State College, which turned into Rowan. And my stepmother was up in Piscataway school system. She was the string maven up there, the string Nazi up there. And she actually was first chair in the Rochester Philharmonic when she was a younger woman. So they were both pretty qualified musicians. My dad could play any instrument. I mean, he used to give music lessons at the house when I was little, and right next to my bedroom. And holy cow! I mean, he'd be in there playing the drums or the trumpet or the French horn or the tuba, you name it. The dude could play anything. He was amazing. So he was a band director his whole life. First in Morristown, then he graduated to college level, and then towards retirement, he taught some courses at Princeton because that's where he was living, up in Princeton. So I kind of had music all around me, my whole life. And as opposed to having maybe G.I. Joes around the house, I would have a flute or a trumpet or a trombone or a violin or a cello or whatever. And I was always picking up an instrument and noodling with it. I didn't master anything, but I did a lot of noodling. My dad was always composing. He had a nice little Hammond organ in the living room, and he was always composing on that thing. And I didn't pay a lot of attention, but I was always listening. He had a Stradivarius violin. I mean, my dad was pretty hardcore. He got Music Educator of the Year one time, and that's actually the night my mother died. He was in Atlantic City getting the award, and my mom died that night. It was just terrible. But anyway.
So growing up, what were you listening? What type of music were you listening to with all that influence in the house?
I grew up with the Doors, the Moody Blues, Hendrix, the Allman Brothers, Buffalo Springfield, Joe Walsh, Sons of Champlain, which was an obscure funk band. Holy cow, all the big bands, The Who, Zeppelin, of course, I probably don't even have to name all of those. I mean, all the big names, but I saw Joplin at the Electric Factory. I saw Hendrix, lucky enough to catch Hendrix one time, like a sardine can in a place, The fire marshals had come in, we would have been in trouble. But regardless, I saw a lot of the wonderful bands. And of course, the Allman Brothers, I was lucky because I met the band I guess it was in 69 or 70, the first time they played the Philadelphia Spectrum.
With Dwayne. Wow.
Dwayne. Oh, yeah, I met Dwayne. I actually hung out with those guys for about a half hour. We shared cigarettes because I smoked in those days. They all bummed cigarettes from me. I made a wrong turn to go to the bathroom. I was there for the show because I heard how great this band was. So I wanted to go see them. I was really interested in the three drummers, or the two drummers rather, and the whole 9 yards. So I went to the show and had to go to the bathroom, and you had to go up the stairs to go to the bathroom. Well, I slipped under the rail and went down the stairs, and I ended up underneath the Spectrum in this tunnel. And I guess every arena has a tunnel that goes underneath it. And here I am on the tunnel. So I'm walking through the tunnel, and all of a sudden I come to the opening where the Zamboni goes in and out, and there's a whole mountain of anvil cases that say Allman Brothers on them. And I'm like, oh man, look at that. That's pretty crazy. I think I better get out of here. I probably shouldn't be here. So I turned around, I started to walk out. I actually had a friend of mine. I had a witness. So we turned around, we decided we better go back and find the bathroom. As we're walking back, the band came out of the dressing room. And J-Mo was playing air drums, and Dwayne and Greg they were all there. They were all right there. And they're like, Greg comes up and says, hey man, you got a cigarette? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I reached and I forget who took the cigarettes, but we sat there and smoked the cigarettes and talked, and I asked them about their band. And I remember Dwayne said, well, we kind of do, country, southern rock, blues, jazz. Actually, he didn't say country first. I don't want to say that. But he just named all these genres, and I'm like, holy cow, really? So, of course, we all know after seeing their songbook over the years, they did play jazz and a little bit of country and some all kinds of other stuff. I don't think country was ever their favorite, but they played it. They did well with it. You know, Dickie wrote those tunes, and they were phenomenal tunes. Let's face it, that really that stuff put them. I think a lot of that stuff put them on the map. You know, Rambling Man and Blue Sky, and wonderful tunes, wonderful tunes. But at any rate, it was a good time to grow up as a as a rock fan. But meeting them was pretty special. I was a fan from that day on. Let's face it, from that moment on, I was a fan of the band. When I went out and watched the show, I was like blown away. Blown away. Holy crap! So I saw them numerous times with Dwayne. I saw them in Atlantic City just after the Fillmore show. They did the Fillmore shows, and the next date after the Fillmore show was in Atlantic City, New Jersey, on Steel Pier. And Steel Pier was this, obviously, a ocean pier that would go out into the water. And this is the famous Steel Pier that they had a diving horse that would dive off the ramp into a tank of water with a beautiful girl with a bathing suit on and all this crazy stuff. They had a sitter that sat up on a pole way up in the air all summer long. I'm like, what's that dude doing? Thunderstorms. I'm just a little kid. So at one point when that pole sitter was up there. But anyway, they played Steel Pier, which was pretty cool. There's pictures of them walking down the boardwalk. I wasn't lucky enough to catch them at that point in time, but there are pictures of them doing that, as well as the Beatles and some other people that played there. So that was pretty cool. And I guess I saw them with Dwayne 4 or 5 times total, before Dwayne passed. And then, of course, continued to see them through the years, with everybody,
Well, I got a question from when you just said that.
Yeah.
Fast forward to when you started working with Butch again. Did he remember you from those days, from when you first saw him?
No, I didn't even ask him. But I'll tell you one thing I did question him on, and we got into a little bit of a spat. I don't want to say argument, but spat was, it wasn't about that date. It was in the next date they played in Philly. They played with Little Richard. Little Richard was supposed to be the dual act. And Little Richard was scheduled by contract to go on first, and the Allman Brothers were scheduled to go on second. And Little Richard refused to go on because he wasn't the headliner, and he was apparently in the back going nuts. So the Allman Brothers decided to go on because I guess Spivak or whoever the producer was at the time said, "Get them out there. Don't worry about Little Richard. He's not going to go out. Heck with him." So Allman Brothers went out on stage, opened their show. They're playing their first song, and out comes Little Richard running from backstage with his arms flailing, and he goes up to the microphone, grabs the microphone that Dickie would sing out of, and started screaming at the crowd. And so the stage people in the back and security, they come and get him and take him back out. And he's, all right, Little Richard's gone. They start the song again. Halfway through the song, here he comes again. He comes out, his arms are flailing, he's going crazy, grabs the mic, and he's screaming and yelling. And I just remember watching Dwayne when this was all happening. And Dwayne just stood there, motionless, just stood there and watched. He had his arm resting on the neck of his guitar, just his hand kind of hanging over the front, and he just stood there and watched. It was just surreal. And they ended up carrying Little Richard out over their heads with his feet, going crazy.
Can you imagine what Dwayne was thinking while he was standing there?
I don't think I can say it on the radio, but it was pretty amazing. I was up close. I had good seats. I was up close. I could see the expressions on his face, and he was expressionless. He was just like, I have that pictured in my brain. It's burned into my brain, him saying with his hand on his neck. He didn't react. He just stood there and watched it. What he was thinking, I'm sure it was like, get off the stage and let us do our thing, And obviously Little Richard was pissed because the promoter, I found out later, through the grapevine, because I worked at the Spectrum on the hockey games and some of that stuff later on, was they told him he wasn't going to get paid because he refused to take his slot. He breached his contract, so he wasn't going to get paid unless he went out as the opening act. So he tried to go out and interrupt their set and tried to be the opening act, and they were already on stage performing. Didn't work. So it was a big problem. So Butch and I bet on whether Dwayne was still with us at that time, and Butch insisted that he wasn't. And I knew he was because I have that vision burned into my brain. I was 30 feet away from him. I know he was there. And we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Well, thank goodness for the internet, because I just dialed it up on my phone. I went, here, read this. And he goes, oh, 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 all right. I guess you were right. You know him. So yeah, so that's what happened there.
All right, I fast forwarded. Let's continue with you growing up and starting playing in bands. Let's talk about
Well,
that.
yeah, I started playing, I guess, in junior high school, the local bands. And instead of dancing, I was always the band, so we would play the school functions and we would play the parties in town. And it was, it was good. And my dad always frowned on me for playing drums because he was the musical director in my school, So I did play classical cello, I played cello for probably 15 years. But regardless, played in a bunch of bands. I played in an original band that won a bunch of song contests up at a radio station up in Princeton, WPST, I think the call letters were. And we had a nice little thing going. A couple of friends I'd grown up with, and we wrote original stuff, and it was fun. It was good. It was rewarding. It was a good background. Then I played in other bands, and it was funny because most of the bands I was in didn't want to play Allman Brothers stuff, but they would pacify me at the end of practice. I would look at, they'd look at me and go, all right, let's play some Allman Brothers to make Tad happy, because they knew I was just an Allman Brothers freak at that point. I lived and breathed the stuff. So, when it just evolved. So I played Allman Brothers. I listened to every note of every drum hit that those guys made. And the first time I met JMO, I laughed and I looked at him. I said, I've studied every time your stick has hit the drum, and I wasn't kidding. Really, I've really studied very closely what he does and how he does it and what he's thinking. It's more importantly to get into his head and think what he's thinking. I still can't really play like JMO, but regardless, he was like, that's really flattering. I really appreciate that. I wasn't sure how he would react, but there's not a sweeter guy in the world than JMO. I got to tell you, this guy is just an awesome guy, and I've got plenty of stories about
He's
JMO.
known as the film master. He'd fill in for where Butch wasn't playing. Butch was playing straight,
right?
And JMO was doing the fills like a jazz fill, and it
Yeah,
was crazy.
Yeah, I call it, in fact, to the band that we have now, but I say, look, I'm the meat and potatoes, and you fill in the cracks. My other guy fills in the cracks. We're in the process. We're going to look for a Latin percussionist to fill Mark's role, but we're doing the same thing.
Well, that's
keeping
what
the
Butch.
music alive.
That's what Butch said of JMO when I
wait.
used
I
to.
lost your audio. All of a sudden, your audio just went like.
Is it here again? Can you hear me now?
Ooh, it sounds like you're in a bottle or something. All of a sudden, it's really grainy. Quality of your voice went south completely.
Huh.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me see if I can get it better here.
I can kind of make you out, but
how about now?
No.
Huh.
No.
All right. Hold on.
I can sort of understand you, though. I think I can understand you for the most part. It's just really, really raspy. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Okay.
Wait, I think it got better. Talk again.
Okay.
Oh, it's better now.
All right.
What happened? It's fine.
I don't know. I don't know.
And I'm near my router, so I'm not losing your signal. I'm 10 feet from my router. I did that on purpose.
Yeah, and I'm right with my router, so we're in good shape. Anyway, like I said, Butch had mentioned that he was the guy that filled in all the cracks that Butch wasn't playing, and he's a jazz drummer, basically, is what he is.
He's a jazz drummer. I mean, he came from Otis Redding, but he's a jazz drummer, and he does amazing stuff. And a funny story about JMO is when they hired Mark. JMO was like, "Oh man, am I going to lose my job or something? This guy's playing a lot of the stuff that I would play." He says, "I had to find other stuff to do." And JMO's a musician and a magician, and as is Mark. And there couldn't be a better triple play than those guys, so to speak. They just fit together like a glove. And at the time through the years, I noticed that there were times where the band became maybe a little more percussive than it did at other eras. And then I think the final 16 years with O'Teal, it kind of backed off a little bit. But regardless, those guys were just insanity together. And I was so privileged to be able to work with all three of them, Mark, JMO, and Butch. Jeez, Butch dragged me to Macon one time because we were playing with the Dreams band. And so he drags me to Macon one time because we also had the Legare band. So I was teching for Legare, so all three of the drummers, because they were all intact, all three of them. So we were at the Capitol Theater in Macon for a week. And he says, I want you to come, and I just want you to watch JMO. You can sit right next to him if you want, but just watch JMO and try to absorb what he does. And, that'll help you with your role in the Freight Train band and whatever else we're doing. So I went and watched Jamer for a week. At the end of the week, I'm like, Butch, I can't play like JMO. Come on, stop. But ultimately, I was kind of kidding. But to watch JMO and to be able to sit there and watch the three of them, I literally sat 5 feet from JMO with Butch on the other side of him and Mark on the other side of him, and I shot videos of those three together, playing probably 10 tunes. So I have 10 videos of just the three of them isolated, close up, backstage at the Capitol. Can't tell you how valuable that stuff is. I'll never put it out anywhere, but it's very valuable to me, and certainly as a help when I want to remember what the heck I'm doing in the band I'm playing in now, because I'm playing
So
Butch's ball.
so let's go back. You mentioned a couple bands,
Yeah.
tribute bands that you were part of. Let's go
The
back to the
way,
beginning of that where you
yeah,
started
okay. So
that.
I had skipping past all the little junior high school and high school stuff, and then skipping past the original band, which was fun, but didn't really get us any. It almost got us somewhere, but didn't quite. So then I ended up being an adult and got a job and didn't play with bands for a while. So I took a little bit of a rest. Actually, took a fairly good respite. Continued to play, but play on my own and play with a couple friends, but I didn't play out publicly. So I took a break. Um, when I guess back in 2007, 2008, I really got the itch to play again. And for my love of the Allman Brothers, I was like, there's only one thing I need to do. I need to find people to play an Allman Brothers music. Let's do a cover band, tribute band. And in 2008, 2007, tribute bands were not really in the forefront. They were just kind of starting to crank up, but really they weren't a focus at that point in time. But it didn't matter to me. I didn't even think about that. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and that was to play Allman Brothers music, find a couple drummers, find a percussionist, find a guy that could play the Hammond organ, find two really great guitar players, and somebody that can sing this stuff, and let's play it. So, I put an ad on Craigslist, of all places, and just said, does anybody want to play Allman Brothers? And that's where this whole thing started. A lot of people say, oh, Craigslist is a bunch of, average people on there. Well, I found my whole band on there. I didn't find them immediately. Obviously, it took time and there were struggles and it took several years. And, over the years, people came and went, and the band gradually started to get better and better. The band was called Hotlanta. I was up in Southern Jersey. I had a really talented guitar player who played with some pretty famous people, and that was my thing to get myself booked. I'm like, look, my guitar player played with these dudes. I have a really good band, and somehow I talked my way into shows. And once we got the band on the street, the band was pretty good. But the first show we did was at a friend of mine's house. This dude had a mansion. I mean, one of those huge Victorian mansions on a corner lot, probably a 3-acre lot. And had a big barn out back, a huge barn, which used to be our clubhouse when I was a little kid. And growing up, that was our place to goof off. And had the black lights and the gray glow paint. And we had a fireman's pole going down to the bottom, and it was our hangout. It was our club. But he was a music aficionado, a really good person, and his sister was a great musician. He used to have big parties at this big freaking mansion that his folks had left him, and he invited our band to play. So the very first time that band played, Hotlanta played, was back in, I think, 2008. We played what we called the Barn Show, and I still have the video from that show. And we blew everybody away, and it wasn't that we were that great, but we were okay considering, and we really didn't have that much practice. But I had a really good keyboard player. I had good players. I had all the right people. We had a good sound system. We had a bunch of slightly intoxicated people. So the whole thing worked, and everybody really, really enjoyed it. And one thing that was really satisfying for me was A, that I put it all together, and B, there were people at that show that I had always looked up to. Musicians growing up, they were maybe 2 or 3 years older than I. And I always looked at them and said, wow, what a great musician he is. Geez, I wish I could play with him someday, or whatever. I just admired their talent and admired them as musicians and people, Well, they were blown away by what we did. I was so, what's the word for it? I was overcome by the love I got from everybody. Like, wow, this is a wonderful project you did. Holy crap, this thing's great. You got to keep it going. So that's kind of how Hotlanta started. Hotlanta is still going today. But I left them when Butch invited me to join his band. But what happened was because Hotlanta became pretty well known around the tri-state area up in Philly. We did really, really, really well. and we were playing large, festivals and theaters, and the band did really well. So I got an email, and I thought about this last night. I don't remember how this happened, but I got an email inviting me up to a camp that was put on by the Allman Brothers, and this was held up in Woodstock, up in Big Indian, New York, up in the Catskills, and it was an invitation. Would I like to attend? I was like, "Well, are you kidding me? Of course I'd like to attend."
So,
So they said, "Write us a note about if you'd like to attend and why you'd like to attend." So I jotted a little note back and said, "Well, heck, I'm playing Butch parts in my Allman Brothers Tribute Band that I put together, and we've been together for X amount of years, and blah 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 blah." And they said, "Okay, come on up." So I went up for a week, all expenses paid, and the first person I met was Butch. And of course, here's my drumming idol for my entire life. Is the guy who's greeting me. This guy was a musical god to me. He was my musical guy.
so they knew about your band
Somehow, I don't know how. I was trying to figure that out last night. What exactly happened? How did that link how did that connection? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you on that. All I know is that it happened. I went, and it was insanity.
So that
So
was
I ended up going.
that was the connection that you made with Butch.
Yes. And so all those years of playing Allman Brothers, all those years of encouraging the people in my hometown, this is wonderful music. We got to play this. We got to play this. And then starting my own Allman Brothers Tribute Band. Suddenly, here I am with them. O'Teal was there. Most of them were there. The thing was that they would do almost a week every year. That was the first year, though. But the plan was to do a week every year up there just to relax. So the players were all there. The wives were there. The pets were there. The housekeepers, whoever was involved, the roadies and their families, anybody who was involved with the Allman Brothers was invited to come to this, all expenses paid. It was pretty darn cool, and this was all basically put together primarily, I think, by Butch. And it was a pretty awesome thing. There was rapids running through the middle of the place, and it was beautiful, surrounded by mountains. And we just goofed off all week and played, in some cases, till 2, 3, even 4 o'clock in the morning. There were 3 venues on the campus, so people would just go around and just mix it up. And there was also an outdoor venue where we would play next to the rapids in front of a big bonfire, and we'd be out there playing Motown, and with members of the Allman Brothers and other people. North Mississippi All Stars, Luther Dickinson would always be there. Great guy, great player. Really, really a guy I look up to a lot in terms of his talent, and he's just a good guy. But there was a lot of people that Butch would invite, so there was plenty of people to play with. We had quality music. I went 6 years in a row, I believe. But after the first year, they decided that, why don't we make a music camp out of this? This might be a good thing. Why don't we do that? And we'll charge. So they started charging people and inviting, let's just say, gifted musicians in the beginning. They tried to invite gifted musicians or people of note. And then gradually it started to catch on where a lot of people just wanted to come, whether they were gifted musicians or not. And they opened it up, which was good, and it morphed into maybe a younger camp. A lot of young people came, and it was good because all us old dudes got to work with the young people. And there was so much talent there. It was insanity to watch these kids, and to go every year and to see them grow each year was insane. And Butch loved that. He really liked helping the kids, and it was pretty awesome. It really was. And we had a lot of guests, Jack Pearson and Junior Mack and J-Mo, and I can't even think of all the people that we had. But we had a lot of guest artists that would show up. Bruce Katz, just tons of people that would show up to come out for a day or two and just do a class or two. Which showed us a thing on Tom Dowd, that wonderful producer who did so much magic. Which just loved that guy, and explained to everybody and made everybody sit down and watch the documentary on Tom Dowd, because he wanted to make sure
it's a great documentary, that one.
Yes, and he wanted to make sure everybody understood what this guy did, and we did. We watched very closely, and we understood, and we now worship the memory of Tom Dowd. Let's face it, it's funny because the guy that's in my bass player in the band that we're starting right now was Tom Dowd's assistant when he was 20 years old. How about that?
Wow,
pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead. Question.
Let me go back. Hotlanta is still a band, huh?
Hotlanta is still a band. They've changed some players. They lost me, which is a big loss, obviously, because I did all the PR, all the booking, all the artwork. I did everything for them, basically. But And of course, I played, but they replaced me with a decent drummer, and they've gone through, I think, 2 singers since then. They've replaced the guitar player. Yeah, the original band to me was the best band, but of course, I would think that way.
So then the next band was Dreams, right?
It was Dreams, really. Yeah, the next band was, well, no, the next band was the Freight Train band.
Oh, Freight Train Band, right?
Yeah, yeah.
When
So we were jamming.
you connected with Butch, and then he started the Freight Train Band.
Yeah, here's kind of how that happened. And this is a little bit great, but we were playing one night in what was called the Roadhouse, which is where, one of the places that everybody would perform on a nightly basis. And Butch and I were playing together on Elizabeth Street. And in the drum solo, he and I kind of traded back and forth, and we just had a good time. And whatever. I played fairly well, I think, that night, and everything went great, and whatever. So afterwards, we're kind of, everybody's back at the bar, and I'm probably 6 or 8 feet behind him with my back to him, and he's talking to Bill Evans, the sax player, the jazz sax player, who's just a great talented guy. And they're talking, and I could swear I heard Bill go up to Butch and say, "Butch, you and Tad make a pretty good pair, right?" And I turned around for a second and looked, and I quick turned back around because I didn't want them to know that I heard that. And I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty damn cool." So I just walked away, no big deal. But I was flattered, of course, because that's coming from Bill Evans. I mean, the dude is a heck of a talent. This guy can play that instrument, So didn't really think much, flattering for a minute. Okay, move on, no big deal. A couple months later, I got a call from Butch. "Hey, I want to start a band. You want to be in a band?" I'm like, do I have to think about this? Says, "No." I said, "All right, I'm in." So
I'm in.
yeah, I'm in. I'm good. So we started the Freight Train, with Barry and Damon. And I'd like to talk about the guys in the Freight Train, if that's okay with you.
Go
I'd like
ahead.
to kind of go through the cast of the Freight Train. Of course, we all know Butch, so I don't have to talk about him. We'll talk about him enough. But we had Bruce Katz. Butch called him the maestro. Guy's amazing on keyboards. I don't know too many people that are better. And of course, he played with the Allman Brothers. He played with Greg Allman. When he sits down at that organ and plays with our band, I just feel like he just wraps the band up in his arms and just surrounds the band in this wonderful music. And of course, there's nobody that plays it better and more authentic than the guy that actually played it for those guys. So we're so honored and privileged to have Bruce, in our band. I mean, holy cow! I mean, this is the guy, So regardless, what a talent! To watch him play is phenomenal. When he really gets cranked up, he'll stand up and start beating on the keys and start. I mean, just goes nuts. And he's so good. He's just so good. So that's Bruce Katz, and of course he has the Bruce Katz band. They just got back from Romania. I think they had a tour planned for UK, but that just got canceled. But Bruce Katz band is a reality, and they're out there. I know you know about them. We had Damon Fowler, who was a guitar player. Damon also has the Damon Fowler band. He's down here with me in Florida. Great slide player, plays a lap slide. Wonderful player, really fun, great guy. Love him. He's a hard-working musician, and he's a talented guy. He's been doing a lot of shows with George Thorogood. He's been opening for George Thorogood band. And Damon Fowler, look him up. He's great. Can't forget Barry Oakley Jr., of course. One of my favorite people. The guy's just so much fun to be with. He was so much fun to be on tour with. There was nobody that worked harder on tour than Barry in terms of just helping and logistics and, moving or packing or whatever we had to do. Barry was right there with his hand up, and you need people like that. I was one of them and he was one of them. So, I mean, I can't say enough about Barry's playing. Barry Oakley, let's face it, the dude can play. He's good on guitar. He's wonderful on bass. He's got his father's instruments. He's got the tractor bass. He's got the original case. He's got the strap. I'm like, I'm just blown away by that stuff. What a privilege to play with Barry. We had, so back to Butch again. So anyway, let's see. We had Lamar Williams, who was the son of Lamar Williams Sr., who was actually, the story was, and I didn't try to re-verify this, but the story was that Lamar Williams Sr. was the original bass player for the Allman Brothers. He was supposed to be the very first guy, but he got drafted and went into service and never really got to perform with them. And Barry got the slot instead. But Lamar was supposedly, again, I haven't verified this, but supposedly Lamar was supposed to be the first slotted bass player, Didn't get to perform. Came back after the service and played at that point. Once Barry was gone, he got the opportunity. So Lamar Williams Jr. obviously is Lamar Williams Sr.'s son, and the guy has a voice that is incomparable. I mean, whew, what a voice, and what a great human being he is. Really, 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 really like this guy. So we were blessed to have Lamar. We had Junior Mac, who, Junior Mac just got off a 2-man show on Broadway. Do I need to say more? How privileged are we to have Junior Mac? My goodness, the guy is such a talent, has such a wonderful voice. He can play that guitar. He knows every note of those tunes. And of course, he played with the Allmans, he played with Buell, he played with everybody. I'm just so blessed to have him, I don't know what else to say about that. That band was just, excuse me. Junior Mac was in Dreams. I'm goofing up. Valor. I can't miss Valor. And that leads me to a story. Valor was in Freight Train, not Junior Mac. I'll cover Junior Mac next. So Valor was Butch's son. And I want to say firstborn, probably, I believe, yeah. And Valor is kind of like I don't know if he would appreciate this or not, but he's kind of like a John McLaughlin. The guy is, holy cow, is he a good guitar player. He's just in a different world. He's several steps above a lot of other people, almost everybody else. The guy is so talented, so fast, so melodic, and so knowledgeable. His knowledge of music history, music theory, he blows me away. He intimidates me. He's just an insane, incredible, musical human being. I don't even know how to say it, but all the Trucks family, they're very bright. It's a very bright family. They're all just really smart people. Butch was brilliant, Valor, all of them. They're all really smart. And it's a very impressive mind, that Trucks mind. And so regardless, Valor, we were playing with the Freight Train. We were playing Capitol Theater. We did that a couple years in a row. I think it was New Year's Eve. And one night, Valor would tend at times to just, in Elizabeth Reed, he would just take off. And it was hard at times to follow him, for me anyway, because he just would just go and just like, wow. And so I actually studied him before he joined the band. I watched a lot of videos of him just trying to understand what he did when he played and how he played, and played along with him, without him, obviously, but through the headphones, trying to make sure that I understood a little bit about what the dude does. And it's hard to do because he's so abstract and so creative and so original, like, holy cow. But Valor was something. So one night we're playing Capitol Theater, and Valor lost the band. He just took off in a solo. He's standing out front, and the band, we had a train wreck. The Freight Train had a train wreck. And we were completely out of sync. We had no idea where the one in the song was, and as musicians will understand that, some other people may not, but that's kind of the starting point for every measure, and the one is important to keep the song organized. It's kind of like a new paragraph. So we lost the one. We had no idea where we were, and everybody was trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and Valor's just out there wailing away. Just, oh my gosh, just insanity how talented this kid is. So I'm looking all the way across the stage at Barry, and Barry's looking at me, and we're part of the percussion section, so we're trying to figure out how to get the band back onto the one, so we're looking at each other, and I'm going back to playing the standard beat. He's trying to play the standard bass riff, and we're looking over at Bruce. Come on, man, join us, So Bruce joined us, and that kind of picked the band up, and all of a sudden we all found our way back to the one again, and we finished the song. And I thought to myself, wow, that was just terrible. Oh my gosh, I don't think that's ever happened to me before, something that bad, right? So after the show, Butch jumped in our tour manager's car and went back to the hotel. And I thought to myself, oh, geez, we're in trouble, man. And Butch was a sweetheart. He never had a crossword with the band. He was always good to us. He never yelled at us for anything stupid that we did or whatever. He was always a sweetheart, a professional guy, and treated everybody with love, But that night he left, and I thought, oh crap, we're in trouble. That was a Freight Train wreck. So the next morning we all eat breakfast together like we always did. So we're all sitting around the table, and we're all waiting for Butch to come down. We're going, and so here he's coming. I'm going, oh, here we go. So it's just kind of funny because I like to observe. So I look around at everybody as he's approaching the table, and everybody's just kind of sitting there like, everybody's like kind of like nervous. And he comes up to the front of the table. And Butch, when he gets excited, he raises his hands in the air. I'm sure you'll see plenty of pictures with Butch with his hands in the air. So he comes up and he says, "Hey, everybody, good morning." Right? And we're like, "Hey, Butch, what's going on? And how's your day going so far?" He goes, "Hey, about last night." And we're like, "Uh-oh, here goes." I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, man, here we go." He goes, "It was great." He says, "I loved it." He says, "Gosh darn it," I'm going to not use the terms that he used, but man, that was great. Oh my gosh. He goes, "We got to do that again. I really love that. That was really fun." He says, "Tonight we're going to do it again." He says, "Vaylor, you're going to take off. You're going to just take off and do your own thing. And I want everybody to play whatever the heck they want to play." He says, "Tad, you can play Wipeout or whatever the hell you want to play. Everybody just play whatever you want to be. And then somehow we'll find our way back.
It'll work.
And somehow we'll find our way back to the one again." So we did it again on Elizabeth Reed, and we did another night on Dream. So we did it again. And as we're doing it, to me, it felt like it lasted like 10 minutes. You know what I mean? It was very awkward, but I'm just goofing around and just riffing on the drums and having fun and whatever. And I'm looking around, and everybody's just, Bruce is going wild, and Butch is going wild. Everybody's going wild. So I'm going, this is crazy. So I look out at the crowd, and the crowd was like stoic. They were just like, they're all like, with their mouths open, just like, what is going on here? They just couldn't. It's just too funny. I'm thinking, oh my god, this is not good. Yeah, this is potentially a disaster, right? So show's over. Finish the tune. Show's over. Everybody, whatever. Which after, I love that was great. We'll do it again in a couple days. Whatever. Okay, whatever. So, I go back to my room and I'm like, I got to see this, and somebody always posted our shows on YouTube. I mean, they were just about always there after the show. So I go back, we break down, we goof off a little bit and have our little, 420 party or whatever we're doing after the show. And we go back to the room and I'm like, go on my computer and go to YouTube and look it up. And sure enough, there it is. Elizabeth Reed. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to watch this. So I watched, and of course I sped through a little bit, but I watched the whole thing almost. And when we got to that point, I'm sitting there just, watching. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just, oh my gosh. And I sat there in silence, and it only lasted about maybe a minute and 15 seconds, minute and a half tops. I didn't time it. It wasn't long. It seemed like forever when we were doing it, though. And when it was all done, I said, you know what? That was pretty cool. I was actually pleased, and I thought that was pretty badass.
It's freeform, basically.
Well, which is like, it's jazz. I'm like, well, I don't know about that. It was a train wreck. We probably should have scripted a little bit better. But I mean, it was just fun. We just goofed off and just had fun.
Sometimes when you script,
when you script, you mess it up.
Right.
That's right. That's exactly right. The first time I played with the Freight Train, I was a little intimidated because here I'm playing with my musical icon. I mean, oh my gosh, right? And I had played with them, already. We had done private events. We had done some seminars. I had played with him at camp for years, and I'd played with him and O'Teal and all those guys for quite a bit. But the first time we went out as the Freight Train, as the other drummer, I was a little bit nervous, just because I wanted to make sure I supported him properly. Actually, I don't want to say I was nervous. I was just introspective, trying to make sure I did the right thing. So I got out my 7A drumsticks, which are these little, tiny, little thin drumsticks. They're not beefy sticks. They're very thin jazz sticks, okay? And you use them basically for a small room, or maybe a jazz drummer, or if you want maybe increase your speed or whatever, because they're small, they're light, they don't make a lot of noise, whatever. So we started the first song, I think it was probably Hotlanta or something like that. And I realized about 15 seconds in that Butch was going to eat me up and spit me out if I was going to play with those little sticks. So I took them and just heaved them over my shoulder and reached over and grabbed two big fat 5B sticks, which are much thicker and much beefier, and began to play, because you wouldn't even be able to hear me. So for me, that was a funny moment in the beginning of the Freight Train band, because here I show up, it'd be like showing up with a little tiny guitar, thinking I don't want to make too much noise. And that's basically what I was thinking. I don't want to interfere with Butch. Later I realized, like in 10 seconds, I realized, no, I need to interact with Butch. I just need to, do the right thing. So that led to, after we toured for several tours, I don't know when this was, but at some point we were eating breakfast or something. We're eating together. And I looked at him, I said, I know you and J-Mo never talked about, the lure is that you and J-Mo never talked about what you guys did. You never talked about it. You just played, and it went together, and there was no real planning or charting of anything. You guys just did it, and it went together like magic. you never talked about it. And he goes, yeah, that's right. And I said, well, I need to talk about it. I said, I need to ask you, am I doing okay? I mean, I feel obligated to ask you because I want to do a good job and I'm having a blast and I appreciate the opportunity. I just want to make sure I'm doing what you want me to do. And he looked at me and he grinned and he goes, I can't hear you. And that's all he said. And I'm like, huh? He goes, think about it. I'll see you in the morning. Right? That's right. It was dinner time. He goes, I'll see you in the morning. So I went back to my room, or I guess after the show, whatever. I went back to the room and I'm thinking about this going, what the heck? What's he talking about? He can't hear me.
I know what he's talking about.
Well, hang on. I'll tell you. So, of course, originally I thought, okay, it has nothing to do with those stupid 7/8 sticks I was using. That's not about volume. This is not about volume or how loud I'm playing. So when we went to breakfast the next morning, do you want to say it? You want to do it?
Go ahead. You say it.
All right. So we're at breakfast the next morning. And he looks at me and he smiles. He goes, did you figure it out? And I said, yeah, I think I did. He goes, go ahead, tell me. I said, I'm in sync with you. You can't hear me because I'm in perfect sync with you, like J-Mo. And I'm not saying I'm as good as J-Mo, but I'm in sync with you. And if I wasn't in sync, you would hear me. He goes, absolutely correct. He says, you're in perfect sync, so I can't hear you. And that's the way it should be. He says, if you weren't, you wouldn't be in this band. So
simple as that.
Yeah. And what happened actually with the freight train was I actually, in the very beginning, I was supposed to be the drum tech and play on 2 songs. And that lasted 1 show. And so after the first show, Butch goes, all right, well, you play on 4 songs tomorrow night. So I played on 4 songs. Then the next night he goes, well, play on all the Allman Brothers songs. So I did that. Then the next night he goes, well, you can play on anything you want. Just play on anything you want. But I kept it just to the Allman Brothers tunes because I felt that the other songs really it wasn't appropriate to have 2 drummers.
How did that make you feel? As you, again,
Getting
he's
off
your
the
idol.
tip?
Yeah, he's
Getting
your
off the tip?
No.
What do
He's
you
your
mean?
idol, and he's telling you, go ahead and play all those songs.
It blew me away. It blew me away. Listen, it all blew me away. And when I think back at it now, I'm blown away. But, it evolved so slowly, from Hotlanta to the camp to Butch and I doing special events at places together. He would invite me and we'd go do a seminar or go play with a random band or whatever. We did stuff together, just for whatever. And then he says, well, let's form a band. I was pinching myself the whole way because, again, this is the guy that I really, really worshipped. And I knew every fill that he did on every song. And that was a little bit of a curse because in the freight train, I wanted to play his stuff, and he was already there. I couldn't play his stuff. So I had to find something else to do, as J-Mo said. I had to find something else to do, which I did. I did the best I could.
And you did it well, according to him.
I couldn't really do J-Mo, but I just did the best I could to not play what Butch was playing. And I still think at times that I was guilty of doing more of that than I should have. When I look back at it now, I still go, oh, I should have done this and I shouldn't have done that. You certainly always want to do over, such a wonderful opportunity. And then to be able to sit back and be able to be retrospective about it and go, wow, that was just awesome. But man, I could have done even better. And now I'm a better drummer than I was in those days. I practiced hard, So one quick thing about J-Mo, who I just adore this guy. J-Mo, a couple quick stories about J-Mo. I had J-Mo in my car one time. He started singing old blues and beating on the dashboard. How cool is that? I mean, I just thought this is like the coolest thing in the world. J-Mo is singing old blues and beating on my dashboard. I'm like, wow, man, this is insanity, One time we were at the H&H restaurant in Macon eating chicken, at H&H, which is the revered restaurant and that the brothers ate when they were back in the early days. And Mama Louise fed the band, the history. And I guess most people that are listening to this probably know the history, but so I won't touch on it too much. But she fed the band basically for free while they were starting out and gave them a place to go get food when they didn't have any food, and that restaurant's still going and she's still alive and she's still there. And holy cow, and it's the best chicken I've ever had in my life, So I'm sitting there eating chicken with J-Mo and he looks at my plate and he goes, Ted. I'm like, what? He goes, look at your plate. I'm like, what's the matter with my plate? He goes, look at your chicken. I'm like, yeah, what about it? I ate it. He goes, no, you didn't. He goes, look at my plate. So I look at his plate and he's got these perfectly clean bones with no meat, no skin. They're just bones. That's it. Nothing. He goes, now look back at your plate again. So I look back at my plate, and it's covered in skin. It's got meat I didn't eat. It's a mess, right? He goes, we're not leaving until you clean those bones properly. I said, are you serious? He goes, I am dead serious. You eat your chicken right now or we're not leaving. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So I had to sit there and clean my bones, and he sat there and watched me as I ate that chicken. I'm like, this is just too freaking funny, man. Oh my God. So I ate my chicken, and, and we left. But it was funny because he's like, you must be from the north. I said, well, haven't you been living up north? I mean, come on, what's going on here? So we laughed about it. And then he says to me, he says, hey, what's about what's this JMO Planet stuff? And I'm like, JMO Planet? Well, I think it's a website or something, or some kind of, tribute to you. He goes, oh, he says, do you like it? I said, well, I don't have a Tad's Planet, so I think it's pretty cool if somebody made a JMO's Planet. I mean, that's pretty badass. He goes, oh, okay, all right, cool. I guess I like it then. I'm like, yeah, you should like it. Shit. Oh my gosh, JMO's. And I talked to JMO 3 days ago. He called. We had a nice little 15-minute conversation, and he gave me some health tips because I threw my back out. So he was telling me what not to do and how to, not to mess my back up. Yeah, he's had 8 operations. That guy, holy cow! He is the bionic man.
So let's move on to post Freight Train, Dreams, and the new thing that you're involved with.
Okay, so Dreams, I think I talked about everybody. Oh, no, Dreams. All right, let's talk about Dreams. So we had Bruce Katz in Dreams. We had Junior Mac. We had Andy Allendort. Andy is a well-oiled machine on guitar. He was Dickie Betts' musical director and slide player for the whole duration of the Southern rock, this great Southern band. So I was very blessed to be able to get Andy to play with us. Just a great guy, great player. A lot of people know this dude, and he's got a lot of projects going on. And man, oh man, was I lucky to have Andy. So between Andy and Junior on guitar, and we were the first. Dreams was formed by myself and my agent Legare from Founding Music. We put those two together for the first time. They played together a lot since then, but we were the ones that had the insight to put them together. So we're going to take that credit for that. But ultimately they get the credit because they're just such wonderful players. And then we had David Stoltz, who, has been around the Allman Brothers world for years. Dude I watched our show from Ribfest again recently and just isolated on David. Man, that dude can play. I mean, he's such a nice guy. I mean, these are good people, these people. And one thing I noticed about exceptional musicians, and maybe not all of them, but one thing I noticed about people that can really play their instruments, these are smart people. They're no dummies. These are intellectual people. These people are very smart, and they are very worldly, and they're very schooled, and it's pretty impressive, some of them, let me tell you, So we were blessed. I mean, I want to go back to the Freight Train for a minute, because when we would do some of these larger events, like if we're on the festivals or something, I mean, my gosh, here I am backstage, and here's Jimmy Herring and Jimmy Hall and Joe, the blues guitar player. Oh my God, Bonamassa, Devin. You name it, they're all there. Everybody from our world is there, and I would see them at all the festivals. Every time we would go to the festival, there's a tent in the back where everybody gets fed, and a lot of people would just kind of hang in that tent. So I mean, you just go back and hang out and talk to people and trade, walk to a different table and sit down and BS for a while. And it was really fun sharing with other musicians from other top bands that were attending the festival, that were playing at the festival. How cool is that? It's just really, really, really neat. So you might be eating dinner at a table with 20 people, and you've got 5 different bands represented, and I mean big bands. Widespread Panic. Here's a story about Widespread Panic. The John Bell, the lead singer in Panic, and of course Jimmy Herring and all those guys. But John Bell, we're sitting backstage, and I think Fish was going. I believe it was Fish. I think it was Fish. Or maybe it's members from Fish. And we're just all sitting around BSing. And John Bell looks at me and says, "Hey man, you want to go watch? I said, "Yeah, sure, let's go." So we walk backstage, and we're standing there. We're just kind of leaning on an amplifier watching. And a really, really good friend of mine was a huge Widespread Panic fan. And he's actually the person who turned me on to Widespread Panic several years before. And his favorite song was Shut Up and Drive. And just a hardcore Panic fan, I thought. So I said to John, I said, I have a really dear friend who is a huge Panic fan, and he's actually the person who turned me on to Widespread Panic. And his favorite song is Shut Up and Drive. And he says, geez, that's really a shame it's not on the set list tonight. I said, that's all right, no big deal. But he's not here anyway, so not a big deal. But geez, just pretty comical. So I'm gonna ask you to take a selfie just because it's him and it's you. And this is one of the few selfies that I've ever asked for in my entire life, but I'm going to do it in honor of my friend. And he said, that's fine. Let's do it. Right. So, I mean, he's a good guy. Again, another one of these nice guys. So he put his arm around me and we smiled and we took a couple pictures, and it was just pretty comical. So I sent it to my friend. Okay. I send the picture to my friend and he goes, nice picture. It looks like you were at a festival. I said, yeah.
He didn't know who. He didn't know who it was.
So, what else did I have? Let me see. I wrote some stuff down. Did I forget any of these wood stores I wanted to tell you about? Let me just go through real quick, see if there's anything else that I think that I wanted to tell you about Butch. No, I think I covered most of that. The project that we're working on now is I'm trying to put something together that's similar to Dreams. So it's just basically the same band with different people.
And I like the name, though. Tell the audience the name of the band.
I mean, we need a drum roll for this name. It's such a great name. I've been sitting on this name for about 1.5 years now, and I just was waiting to get the band to put it in front of, and now suddenly I have it. You ready? Drum roll. The name of this band is Mushroom Soup. Love that name, Mushroom Soup. I mean, it lends itself to graphics. We can have one-eyed mushrooms flying around and whatever. So, I mean, it lends itself to graphics. I think it's pertinent. We're not necessarily trying to make drug references. That's not what it's all about, even though mushrooms are becoming legal in some states. That's not what it's all about. But it's just to be, there are two things that the Allman Brothers always use were either peaches or mushrooms. And the peaches are so used. I mean, there's every peach name for a tribute band out there there's so many of them. I just, and then all the names of the songs and everything else. And I'm like, I need something different. I need something unique. And I came up with a bunch of stuff, and that was the one that I said, you know what, that's a great name. I got to use that name. And pretty much anybody I bounce that off says, wow, that's a great name. So I'm excited to use that name, and I'm going to copyright that sucker, because I don't want anybody grabbing that, because that's a good name. And I have really wonderful players. I have pedigreed people that have all played and toured and have tour experience. So we're pretty excited about that.
Are you going to tour this year with Mushroom Soup?
It's hard to say because of the pandemic slowed us down. We've only had 2 sessions so far with these guys, and we had to cancel a session last week because of this current strain. I for one have not caught COVID yet, so I'm trying to avoid that if I can. I don't know if I'll be able to completely, but at this point I'm still trying to avoid it. So we did cancel our session last week. We'll probably pick up maybe next week or the week after, but I don't know. I have mixed emotions, so I want to get this thing rolling, but I don't really want to catch COVID. So I'm going to kind of let the band vote on it, see what they want to do, because I think 1 or 2 of them were kind of disappointed. But I mean, it's so in Florida right now, it's 95,000 cases a day, 75,000, 54,000, 75,000. We've got like 500,000 new cases in the last 4 days.
So
and it's
Tad,
so transmittable. Yeah.
So Tad, how do people find out about you and all of the bands that you're part of?
How do they find out me and our bands? Well, they can go to my Facebook page, Tad Isch. They can go to dreamsband.net. They can also look for Dreams Band on Facebook. We're there, and we have a pretty good presence there. Although, because of the pandemic, we haven't been completely active on the Facebook page. Let's face it, because things have slowed down quite a bit. And Dreams is kind of at this point on the back shelf because Lamar is out on the road with North Mississippi All-Stars, and they've got 1 million gigs booked. And Junior Mac has been on Broadway. So Dreams Band kind of had to be put on the side, and that's kind of why I started this project down here in Florida. So
there is no mushroomsoup.net or anything like that people can go to see any of the new stuff.
There's no Mushroom Soup website yet. There will be very soon. So if they watch my Facebook page, they're going to get all the information on Mushroom Soup as it evolves. And
Great.
I will be putting a website up probably in about, I would say about 1 to 2 months. We'll throw that up, and we'll have a good site. But the thing, obviously, when you're starting a new band, you got to practice yourselves up. You got to get out and play. You got to do some videos. You got to put up the website, and then start talking about it. So that's what's all going to be happening in the next 2 or 3 months. And this will be the third Allman Brothers cover band that I've produced, so to speak.
Great.
And both of the other ones have been very successful. One on an amateur level, the second one on a more of a professional level, and this one should also be on a professional level. I expect this band to be very similar in terms of quality to Dreams Band. And I think Dreams, I'm really proud of Dreams. I'm really proud of that band. I hope people will listen to it. We have some shows up on the website. Again, dreamsband.net. I keep saying that, but if you go to the site and then go to menu, go to videos, we've got 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 videos, and there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube as well. So, and again, find me on Facebook and friend me, and I'll keep you updated on what's going on with Mushroom Soup. I apologize for not having the site up yet, but
It's
we're
all
only
right.
2 sessions in.
Well, Tad, I just want to say thank you for taking a long time out of your day to spend
No
with
problem.
me.
Glad to do it. You kidding?
And
Wonderful opportunity to talk about Butch. I love the guy. When I play now, I think of Butch. And when I would play with Butch, he would look over at me, and I would be conscious of how I was holding my sticks, and just conscious of what I'm doing. When he would look at me, he would never say a word to me, but he would look at me. Now when I play, I still see him looking at me. It's kind of freaky. And there's not a day
he called you the other drummer, right?
No, Warren called me the other drummer. They were kidding around. Well, this was about 6 years ago, backstage at Wani Festival, and I don't remember what was going on, but we're all standing around in a big ring, and it's JMO and Warren and a bunch of people, and everybody's standing around yucking it up. And I'm pretty sure it was Warren says, "Well, you're the other drummer, so you must be the other drummer." And I'm like, "Yes, I'll take that with honor. I will take that nickname, the other drummer." I was pretty happy with that. So I
That's
haven't
good.
publicized that, but I was pretty proud of that. I don't want Warren probably doesn't even remember. He's got so much going on, but I remember, and that was big for me. I thought that was pretty cool. So Butch told me that I was the only other drummer to tour with him, to play and tour with him. He says I did other projects with people, short-term projects. I did some things where somebody would play a song or two, but you played and we toured together, and you're the only other guy that did that. One more thing, if I can tell you this last thing,
Go
I'll tell you
ahead.
one more quick story, and you can always cut it out if it's too long. One day when we were in Macon, he sent me to the warehouse. Fans will appreciate this, because as a fan, I was like a kid in a candy store. He sent me to the warehouse where all of the Allman Brothers show was stored: staging, lights, drum cases, anvil cases, all those anvil cases, those famous anvil cases, they were all in this big storage place. And I got to go over there and go through this. I want you to go over there and just go through everything, make sure nothing's damaged, nothing's mildewed, whatever. Just check everything out. And I did find a couple amps that were mildewed. I think one of them might have been Blaine's, little tiny small amps. One of them, they were both green. I got them the both, so you could get them repod. So one of the things, I was just amazed because Red Dog made these huge cabinets for the drums. Literally, it fit the whole drum sets in one case, one big, huge case that I literally could have walked into. They were that big. I could walk in and close myself in there, and probably had 3 people in there with me if there wasn't drums and all the other stuff. Amazing. They run rollers. They would pick them up on the forklift, put them on the truck, and away they go to the next show. But back there, everything from the Allman Brothers show, amazing. I mean, Brotherhood lighting, it was all there. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I'm looking at this stuff. So I opened up one of the anvil cases, and in the bottom of the case was a bunch of baseball bats, gloves, and wiffle balls. I always heard the story that they used to play wiffle ball on the road. And I remember grabbing one of the bats and taking it back to Butch and saying, "Look what I have." He goes, "You got that from me?" I said, "Yeah, you guys used to play wiffle balls." "Yeah, we did." I was, "Man, you guys beat the hell out of this bat." I mean, it was all dented. It was destroyed. This bat was destroyed, right? He goes, "That's pretty cool." I said, "Well, I brought it because I thought maybe we could play some wiffle ball." He was like, "Nah, I'm too old. I don't play wiffle ball." "But you can have the bat." "I can have the bat?" He goes, "Yeah, you can have the bat. There's more of it." I'm like, "Yeah, there is. There's more. You can have it." I'm like, "Okay." So I have that bat somewhere. But it was just too funny. So I told JMO about it the other day, 3 days ago. I talked to JMO. I said, "By the way," I said, "I got one of those wiffle ball bats you guys used to play wiffle ball with." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I got one." I said, and I told him the quick story I just told you real quick. He says, "Well," I said, "So you guys used to play wiffle ball, right?" He goes, "No." I'm like, "Wait, what do you mean no?" He goes, I didn't play. I'm like, you didn't play? He goes, no, I didn't play. I'm like, so everybody else played wiffle ball and you didn't play? No, I didn't play. I said, well, what were you doing? He goes, I was practicing. What do you think I was doing? I mean, when JMO calls me, the first thing he asks me is, are you practicing? Are you playing? Every conversation I have with that guy, the first thing he asks me. I'm like, oh my gosh. He
Wow.
goes, yeah, I was practicing. I'm like, you sure you weren't with the girls or something, JMO? He says, I'm not answering that. But just another funny story. They keep coming to my brain as we go. So
That's a great one.
that's a good one. So I appreciate the opportunity. It's been fun. It's
Thank you.
always nice to reminisce. I miss those days. They were some of the best days of my life, obviously. And I thank Butch. I thank everybody in that community for receiving me. I played at Butch's funeral, which was, monumental for me to be able to honor him in that way. The freight train performed. We had big pictures of him in the background. They've got this running loop video, which I'm in, which was just, crazy. And I was sitting with Susan Tedeschi in the crowd, and Legare was up performing. And I said, Susan, you need to get up there. She's like, nah. I'm like, come on, you need to get up there. Come on, you need to go up there. She's like, you think so? I'm like, yeah, I think so. You need to go up there. And she's like, I'm like, come on, Susan, go. So I literally practically picked her up and pushed her. So she got up and she walked backstage, and she shows up holding Dwayne's guitar. And she walks out and plays with Legare. And I forget how long. I think she played a song or two, but
Wow.
pretty awesome stuff, So, I mean, all the people that I got to meet was insanity, and so blessed to be able to play with so many of those people. And
You're still doing it. You're still doing it.
I'm still doing it. Dude, it's going stronger than ever. One last thing I want to say to people: if you're an aspiring musician, whether you're 10 years old or 60 years old, I don't care. Keep playing. If there's a music master's course like the Allman Brothers were putting on, go to it. Because look at what happened to me. I mean, look at what happened to me.
Yeah.
It's all, okay, I have a whole history of why I evolved and got to that point. And if I hadn't done all the things leading up to that, I probably wouldn't have gotten asked to be in that, be there. But the point of the matter is definitely go for your dreams. Definitely go to these events. Definitely surround yourself with people that are, if you can, that are better than you, because you'll be a better player and you'll learn from them. And keep kicking it. I'll be playing till I can't, till I'm dead.
There you go.
Why not? So.
Well, thanks again.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Best wishes to all of your audience and everybody else.
Thank you. We'll see ya.